Okay, I'm now gonna bring a bunch of the speakers on stage. Here we go. I think I got everyone. Hey everyone.
Hi everyone. Hello.
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 So I figure what we could
Hi.
do is like go ahead and this can be kind of conversational. If you have questions for each other, feel free to ask questions of each other. We had a couple kind of questions come in, but does anyone have anything right off the bat that they're curious about? So yeah, go for it, Bill.
I have a question. Yeah. So I loved the Very Perry color palette. And I had a question for you, which is you mentioned that, the lime green was the opposite side of the color wheel. But then you were like, I'm not really into that color and I can pick any color I want. And so you picked the shamrock, which by the way, looked gorgeous. They did go really nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Where is the sort of, how do you, if you're not like comfortable with your own color sense and your color abilities, where do you find that line between, well, I don't like that, this feels right, and to sort of know that you've picked the quote unquote right color?
Oh, okay. I'm happy to answer that. Well, the easiest way to do it is do by color rules. So you could just go ahead and do the complementary version. I mean, that's the safest. I chose what I particularly liked as a combination. The other thing you could do is you can go and look and see what somebody else has done. So if you went and you checked it out, you'd see that Color Brewer uses a purple type and green combination. So that you could go ahead and follow what other artists have done or what others have done. And that is what I often do in visualization. I'll go to art museums and take a picture of a painting. I wrote this up in UX, a Medium, a publication about going to a museum and taking a picture of the colors that I liked and using those combinations that I preferred. So that's just what I do. In other words, the statement is art is steal. So you're borrowing from what others have done in the past.
Why not? Makes sense.
That you like.
And also,
yeah, that's a very time-honored technique.
I would also add that someone in the chat said, please, can you share the photos when you get the sneakers? So, if you want to tweet that out. When you get
thank you very much. Yes, I'm waiting for them. I will. I promise you, I will. I will post them on Twitter. I'll let you know. I will model it myself. I actually have a very Perry dress, and I wore it last night. I did ballroom dance. I think we have that in common, Molly. I ballroom danced evening, and I'll see if I can find that. In the meantime, let me go and see it. But you guys keep going. I'll see. Okay.
Oh my God, love it. Yeah. Well, so I'll just some questions came in, so I'll start asking. But please chime in, and if you have questions for each other, please keep adding. Somebody asked, is the library, and this is so for Angela, is the library project for libraries in post-secondary educational settings or for younger kids / community libraries?
Thanks so much. That's a great question. Most of the members of our team were affiliated with higher education institutions. We did have a member of the team from a public library system, and the modules have since been rolled out to the Seattle Public Library or Seattle City employees. But even during the discussion, we tried to tailor materials such that most of them would work well, at least for high school. We definitely had somebody on the team who had done some tests of the activities and content with high school. And we try to, in our slide deck, give some advice on how to tailor the activities to different groups and to give some advice about which audiences might be most appropriate for different materials.
That's fantastic. Cool. Did you come back with the dress, Teresa Marie?
I've got it. I'm trying to figure it out. Okay, it's on my computer. How do I get it to you?
Oh, you could share your screen if you want.
Okay, let's see. Is there?
Yeah, let me know when you get that started. Yeah, at the bottom.
I got it up. So can you?
Okay.
So then what do you?
I don't think you're sharing it.
Okay, what do I have to do? Where's share down here? Oh, stop. Mute, stop. Cam back. Share. Okay, share screen. Can you see it?
No, I'm sorry. Let me know if you. Oh, here we go.
Here we go. All right, go away. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
There it is.
Yes.
There it is.
That's fantastic.
There it is.
Yep.
That is a very Perry dress.
Love
So
it.
taken last night. So it's my most
And what
current.
kind of dancing were you doing?
Okay. That I was doing what they call ballroom. So I did West Coast swing, East Coast swing, tango, foxtrot, waltz, Viennese waltz.
I love it.
I did a lot.
Well, someday maybe
practice.
we'll dance together.
Good.
I do
That'd
all
be
that
fun.
stuff too. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So there I am. All right. So
Nice.
hot off the press.
Cool.
All right. I'll also post that on Twitter in case anybody missed it. Okay. Thank you, Molly, for encouraging me. Thank you so much, everybody.
You're here.
Another question came in. So this is for Layla. The presentation Visa, it has a lot of information at once. Are the materials available somewhere? People want to know. And also, just seeing it, like several people were like, "Oh my God, I'd love a longer version of this." So.
Oh, thank you. That's great. I did. I did pack a lot into that 5 minutes, so
Yeah.
hopefully it wasn't too overwhelming. Yeah. So that's a great question. I can say we're like working on getting it onto our like public. We have like developer.visa, like a public site with a lot of like open source stuff. So it should be there within a week or two. Just working out the final details and getting it published out there. Yeah.
So that's something that'll be publicly.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
would love. I mean, I'd love to. I did spend a lot of time and put a lot of love into the whole framework. So I definitely love to hear, people's thoughts, whether it's challenges.
I thought that was a great framework, and I love the labeling, the critical questions. Awesome, and nicely designed too. I love the presentation of it. So
thank you
for whatever that's worth.
Thanks. No, that's great to hear.
Perhaps when it's ready, you could think about putting it in the notes doc for your lightning doc, and then people could find it.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it too. It was wonderful. Just
I definitely try to follow, the principles in my, whether it's slide decks or the document itself. So I think that's great to hear.
Hi. I wanted to ask Angela. Angela, I think I attended your workshop, that workshop. Didn't you have it at NC State or something like that? It was a terrific event.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we've had, so I'm in the Triangle area along with a couple of people who are both presenters and in the audience that I see, Triangle of North Carolina in the United States. And so I've given some talks related to this content before, especially at local venues. Yeah.
And then you encourage people you have workshops that encourage people to contribute further to the research, right? It's really great.
Yeah, I think one of the goals of this project, a grant only lasts so long. And so the tricky part is, how do you create a sustainable community? And of course, Data Visualization Society is a great example of that. We've struggled with this in libraries because visualization is, it's not one of those core library areas that every library has. And it's so new that there isn't necessarily a great place for us to gather. And so we've wanted to build our own community and make sure people, not just in libraries, but interested in similar kinds of instruction and education, have a place to go, and just get these materials out there so people can benefit from them.
I just want to say it was really cool seeing that. I did my degree in master's in library science, so it's rare, but it's nice when you find people with that Venn similarities.
Yeah, it's such a rich community for information literacy and and data ethics and data management, and so we think that that's a skill set that the libraries bring that's somewhat unique compared to people who are coming from a CS background and want to focus on the tools, which is also very important, or from journalism, where you're interested in kind of targeting a particular type of storytelling or audience. We think everybody needs these literacy skills, and I know that this is a community that agrees with all of that. So
I think even the thing that always struck me is the kind of the way we teach how to do reference interviews, where like taking the question that people ask and really getting to the underlying need. It seems like such a easy thing to apply to, a lot of what we do in databases as well.
Yeah, in some ways, so the librarian asking you what you're trying to get out of your research and giving you advice on how to do that research, it's very much like a kind of client relationship that a lot of people in the visualization community might have, is like, tell me what you're trying to say and what you're trying to understand in your data and in your visualization, and give that advice and use your expertise to kind of co-create a project like that.
And Angela, I had a question kind of related to that. I think we hear a lot within the library, to your point of, how can we best serve our clients, customers, the people that we serve to gather information, but it's also important for us to show what's in our collection. So I'm wondering if that's something that you do, that your project encompasses at all.
That's a really interesting one. And actually, in the middle of being a PI for this grant, I transitioned from a forward-facing role where I was helping our community build their own visualizations to an internal role in our assessment group. And so that has been forefront on my mind the whole time that I've been working on this. How do these materials also benefit the library itself as a data consumer and a data producer and someone, an organization like any other trying to understand its work? So to me, we can all benefit from learning a little bit more about data visualization. And increasingly, it feels like these skills find their way into lots of different jobs in libraries.
They definitely do.
Behind the public services as well as outside. So, so
we're finding that too.
One of the opportunities here is maybe getting the conversation started and showing people that this is a normal part of everyday life into the 21st century. Is working with data and trying to understand it and being critical consumers and producers of data visualization. So I'm seeing that too. I'm seeing that internal data visualization skills are increasingly important in libraries.
And you're using Congresswoman Porter, I think that's the correct name, right, as one of the examples, which is a great example for that real world application of data, which the fact that we all need this literacy I think that's demonstrated well with her as an example, not necessarily, a data viz example from within our universe,
Yeah, exactly. I think we're so blessed to have some really high visibility examples of where visualization has been used to try to emphasize a super important point and tell that story quickly and effectively. And I think that's a great example. We're happy to feature it. Yeah.
Bill, a question has come in for you, which is, how can we sell F-no or default to no as an approach at work? This seems simpler as a contractor or other external designer. I'm in a hierarchical org where I'm often the only designer, so there are more hurdles on design decisions and a default to yes on requests for additions than I'd hoped.
Yeah. Like trying to sell any idea upstairs when you are internal, and I get it, it's to lean on those external experts who are saying such things. And so, what I found is that, if you go into an organization and say, listen, don't trust me, I don't know what I'm talking about, but look, Cole Knaflick wrote this great book that says declutter and focus. And, there are 8,000 talks in the data viz world saying the same thing, and Tufty and da-da-da-da-da. This is not new information. And so I get it. Believe me, I still, by the way, it's worth saying, lose half the battles. So as much as I'm like, default to no, F no, listen, I say F no all the time to my clients. And they're like, F yeah, just do what we say. Okay, I'll try. But, do the best you can and then lean on that expertise, because, unfortunately, when you're in an organization, especially if you're more junior, people aren't going to just believe you, but there are other people saying it. So lean on them.
Yeah, totally. And do you find, so someone asked a question, which I feel like relates to this, which is, Bill, do you find that the people who you work with often know what the key message they want to convey is? I imagine some would want to keep many parts of the graph. And I relate to this question because as a freelancer, I assume you've experienced this too, Bill. There's multiple times where people are like, this is exactly what I want, build this thing. But sometimes it takes a ton of why questions to get behind, well, why do you want this thing? And then once you get to the why, it's like, oh, here's other ways you can approach this thing, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I just have two thoughts of it. First of all, 100% yes. The discovery process should be like deep Freudian therapy, right? Like you asked me for this, okay, let me talk about your childhood for a while. Let's find out what's really going on here, and then eventually we'll unearth what you really want. So first of all, we can get there even with a storytelling experience, because yeah, it's never what they think they want. But then even in the context of, let's say it's a dashboard. The other question people always ask is, hey, listen, I have dynamic data. It's a weekly meeting. It's a dashboard the CEO looks at every other week. I never know what the story is. It's impossible to know what the story is because it's constantly changing. Cool. You can actually still use this technique by changing how you approach dashboard design. Meaning, rather than just a simple example, rather than having a threshold of X, and if a number is above X, we light it up in red and put a big circle around it. How about instead of using X, like an actual value, it's more of a ratio. If it's X% above, the median, then that's when we trigger those things. And so it's just sometimes a little bit more thoughtfully approaching, even when you have dynamic data, how you approach the idea of what gets bubbled up and then muting everything else. And so, yeah, therapy, and then, just change how you approach things, even in a dynamic environment.
Yeah. And can I suggest too that in addition to what Bill just mentioned, I think a lot, and I tell my students sometimes to think of themselves as actors. And what are the two questions that actors ask all the time? They first of all ask, well, who's my audience? And who are the people who are seeing this thing? And what do they want? And then the classic one is, what's my motivation? So when I'm designing this thing, what am I trying to do here? What outcome or action do I want my audience to take? And once they internalize that, I think that really helps in terms of everything, journey mapping, in terms of design, in terms of just mapping out what they want to do. So that's advice that I give a lot.
Yeah, and it's great advice. And I have the same two things, really a third thing being obviously what the data is saying. And the other thing to keep in mind, once you internalize that, as you said, and you have to remember to go back to it. Because you know what, let's say you're working on a presentation and you're 3 days into this presentation, the deadline's the next day, you've been working on it for hours, you're like blood, sweat, and tears into this one stupid chart, you can't figure it out, slide 67. Wait a second. I thought about my audience at one point, didn't I? I thought about what I was trying to actually accomplish here. Let me go back to that, have a little more therapy. Oh, wait, this thing is garbage. Let me throw it out. Let me do something different, or whatever the case may be. So you have to remember that you did it and actually revisit it.
Totally.
So I'll just add, that's kind of why we, I think I mentioned a little bit in the talk that we, try to focus first on like purpose and relatedly like information architecture, because a lot of times, people naturally, like when they come, like if we have office hours, they come to us, they often are like expecting to talk about the charts themselves. And, you can, a lot of times if you then go and figure out the audience and the purpose, it's going to totally change what you want to say in your charts. And the one thing I'll say we lean on a lot that I didn't really mention in the video is that it's a questions to be asked framework. And it's based on jobs to be done, but more focused on questions and on complex, like nonlinear experiences. And I think that's a really good way of looking at it. So I think a lot of times, especially at the chart level, we think about very specific tasks, like I want to compare, sales over time or whatever. And so like the way I think about it is like those individual tasks or like smaller questions like help you answer whatever is that big question, just like the big job, right? It's more like the goal, but it's I think a helpful way to kind of keep your thinking about the big picture goal, and then also how the individual tasks relate to it.
Yeah, totally. Like getting down to like what are the actual like big goals and motivations behind all this. Yeah. Cool. Well, Adam, I wanted to hear a little bit about your presentation as well. So it sounds like this is a big hobby of yours, yes? Like baseball. I want to hear more about what made you want to do all this.
What's my motivation?
Yeah. What's your motivation?
Yeah. Well, like a lot of people, I started first collecting these things when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of put those away in a box, and my parents, when I left those behind, eventually threw those out, kind of much to my dismay. And I graduated. My high school is named after Walter Johnson, who's probably the second greatest pitcher in Washington baseball history. So once the pandemic hit, of course, all of us, or a lot of us, were kind of looking for things to do and ways to connect with people. And so I started actually doing paintings on cards, where I would actually take a vintage card and I would paint on it. And I still do a fair amount of that. Very, very nice, Bill. Thank you. I think I see an Eddie Murray there.
Sorry.
Oh, no worries. I'm glad you did. But then I got to thinking, well, what can I do here that's not just embellishment and kind of making something new out of something old, but how can I add to what we're doing? And I had joined the Society for American Baseball Research that I mentioned in my talk. They're an organization not just within the States, but it's a global association of people who are interested in baseball. And a lot of what they do is very quantitative or very historical, but they haven't really embraced visualization yet. They've taken some steps to do it, and there's actually an analytics conference coming up in March that has some really creative research in it, and a lot of very creative visualizations. Like I've seen one person basically taking almost like a toxicology methodology and applying it to baseball research, predictive analytics, often around, can you predict what pitch, or can you predict, what's going to happen during a play, during an at-bat. And I got to thinking about, when we look at these cards or any statistics in sports, and you see that classic spreadsheet, here's the year, and here's how many at-bats, here's the team that they played for, and statistics from year to year. Well, that, as I said in my talk, hasn't changed in probably over 7 decades. So how can we take that and visualize it in a comparative way? And so I started just riffing on that, experimenting on it. You can look on my Tableau Public and see some examples of work that I've done in this area, and I can include that in my notes too. I think the best example or my favorite example of what I was able to do is I mentioned Josh Gibson in my talk, who may have been the greatest home run hitter who ever lived, better than Bonds or Ruth or Aaron, better than Sadaoro in Japan. But we don't know exactly how many home runs he hit, because in the Negro Leagues, as they were called back then, we wouldn't call them that now, he may have hit more than 800 home runs. But the official number for him, based on documented official games, is 165. So I showed in this data visualization the difference between his high total and his low total, which may have been something like 916. It was probably significantly above 800. And the fact that we don't have the official statistics because they weren't kept. And white baseball thought, well, the Negro Leagues are not an official organized league, even though in 2020, Major League Baseball incorporated their statistics officially. But they're not complete. And I could go into what drove that. This isn't the place for it. But that's what visualization can show. And so I'm really excited to be able to do that within this great American sport.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I didn't realize that about the data mismatch. And you also mentioned that, like, so they've been keeping the same kind of statistics for, like, what'd you say, like 7 decades or something?
Yeah, longer than that. The first box score was created in New York City in the 1840s.
Oh wow.
So now, there weren't the same advanced statistics that there are now, because we didn't have Excel back then. And when you hear about sabermetrics, well, those are people who have a much better math background than I do that are able to come up with these incredible ratios that describe performance in very minute detail. So who's the best player to have hitting in the 9th inning with 2 outs, 2 players on base at second and third, and the other team's best reliever on the mound in Game 7 of the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can actually crunch those numbers and gather those statistics and, again, come up with very elaborate methodologies to describe that. I can't do that. But what I can do is
someone can.
Good to know our strengths
Someone
and
can.
weaknesses. Then you can always pair with someone who has that strength,
Exactly. Yeah. And what visualization lets us do is to put that on paper or on a screen in a way that can be really readily understood. So, let's combine this statistic to that statistic. Another thing that I've just done is I've grouped all of the Negro leagues together and the white leagues together during the sort of the golden age of both of them from 1920 to 1948. Jackie Robinson joined the Dodgers in 1947, and with that there was a rush of black players onto previously whites-only teams. So the Negro leagues kind of withered and died after that. But I wanted to show, because the argument's been made in a really terrific publication that Saber just came out with Baseball Reference, were the leagues equal in terms of the level of play? And it turns out that they were. Looking at winning percentages, looking at offensive statistics, you can really state with statistical rigor that these 2 leagues played at a similar level, and that but the Negro leagues were not inferior at all to the white leagues, and that's a really important argument for us to make.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for sharing all that.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. This, as you can tell, this is what gets me going. So.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I could see you light up when you started talking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have just like a few more minutes. Are there any other questions that y'all want to ask each other?
Well, I was just going to make a point that, baseball is so interesting because it is probably the only, maybe not the only sport on the earth, but certainly the only one of the majors in America that it is a data thing. So I went to a Red Sox game when I was like 8 years old with my uncle, and we're sitting watching the game, and my uncle actually wasn't really watching the game. He had a piece of paper in front of him, and he was just writing everything down. The box score, people used fans would go to the game and write down the data, and then he would take the data home, put it on a shelf. I was like, did you watch the game? Because he was literally focused more on the data than he was on the game. That's not that weird, right? So it is so rich with data, but to your point, the visualization is very far behind. And by the way, that conference you mentioned, is that the one that happens at MIT every year? Because there's a lot of really cool visualization that happens there nowadays. But I know that the industry is still playing catch up.
Yeah, the one you're talking about is the Sports Business Conference, or the Sports Analytics Conference. And this one is Saber specific, so it's virtual from March 17th to 20th.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll also include a link to that in my notes to this talk for anyone who'd be interested.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Great.
I wanted to leave a slightly awkward pause just to see if anyone else had, you gotta leave a little bit of space. Well, cool. I'm just gonna give one more check to see if there's any more questions that came in. Make sure I asked everyone's questions. Okay, it looks like I did. So thank you everyone for joining me up on stage. This was really fun. I actually just want to note something that someone said, which is, I didn't expect this, but the lightning talks both days have been my favorite part of Outlier. So
that's great.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
All right.
So go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having us. This was wonderful.
This was really, the talks were really great, and it was so fun to get you up here to chat through them. So, and it sounds like people are excited to see the things that are coming from y'all. So if you want to add any links or information or whatever to the talk notes for the lightning talks today, I'm sure people would love it. So
Will do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. Bye-bye.